Discovering voices, building worlds. The Ampliverse.
Welcome to Harry Potter and the Anxious Millennials, a show where we delve week by week into each chapter of the Harry Potter series. Ari.
Adam.
Hello.
It's been a whole 5 minutes.
It's been a minute. How are you?
I'm fine. It's my turn to talk.
Are you
I'm
ready?
fine.
How are you doing with the change in the type of heat? That's what I think I'm curious about. It's more humid, obviously, than LA.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I don't like that there aren't air cons over here. AC is like not. I mean, when you're in a store, like a shopping center,
like a
there.
window unit.
No, like where were we? We were in London yesterday because I was seeing my friend Julia. And then when we were going to the train station, or like going to our platform in the train station in not King's Cross, but St. Pancras, which is like literally a street over from King's Cross. We were in the Costa Coffee and I was like, how do they work in here? Like I was like, it is so hot. I don't know how they do it. Because I was like, you're making like hot drinks for people. So like you're next to the steam. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they do it. I was like, and just we got a fan for the room today because we just were like, we need something to like circulate the air because it just gets so hot in there. So we were like, well, we'll get one of those. I can't remember. You guys have central AC, right? You and RJ? Mm-hmm. In your apartment? Okay. Yeah. That's what we had in California, obviously. But there was an apartment that we lived in Valley Village that did not have. It just had a unit on the wall. And that was horrible because we did not have anything like in our bedroom. And so we had to get one of those units that like kind of connects into the window. But that apartment just was not well insulated. So I think what we'll try to get is the ones that go like above your doorway or just like up on the wall. Those air cons that you can get installed. Do you know what I'm talking about? Not one that's connected to a window. So we're thinking whenever we get our own place, we'll get those for the bedrooms. So I was like, I don't want to have to worry about connecting something to the window because you can't have just a window unit that we would have in America. The windows here aren't like that. So you couldn't have, they all like open like a page in a book, you know, it like opens out.
Shutter style, yeah.
Yes. So you couldn't, it's just impossible to put like an air con like that. But yeah, and like Michael can't sleep if it's hot. So we both were just like, yeah, we need to just get an air con in our own place for sure. How is it there? What's the weather like for you guys right now?
It's been great. Today's a little warm. It's like 80.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's probably about the same here right now.
Well, this week, Ari, we're not talking about the fucking weather, okay?
No, we're not.
Not
in this chapter, girl. I do mention
This
the weather
week-
once. You've been warned.
In this chapter?
Yeah, I talk about something to do with the weather once.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this week, Ari, we read chapter 21, which is called The Eye of the Snake. What happens in this chapter?
Okay. Let's see how you feel about this.
Okay.
Hagrid leads his first lesson back since being back. Is it worth it noting Umbridge? Umbridge, not shadows. What do you call it?
Inspects the class.
Yeah. Umbridge inspects Hagrid's first class after returning to Hogwarts. Harry leads the last DA meeting of the semester. Has a moment with Cho alone. And Harry has a very bad nightmare. I feel like that's the best of like summarizing all the key points.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Okay. Great. So the chapter opens with Hermione going to see Hagrid again on Sunday morning, but Ron and Harry can't because they have a shit ton of homework. I'm just wondering, like, when is Hermione doing her homework where they cannot do it? Is my question. because you know that Hermione's like, oh, well, this is a great time to do our homework. And they're just like, nah. So that's why they're doing their homework on Sunday morning. Unless Hermione's just like, you know, an early riser and she gets up at like 6 and does her homework and then like, you know, enjoys the rest of her day. I don't know. So Hagrid basically, Hermione wants, you know, like we talked about in the last chapter, Hermione's trying to convince him to teach very boring lessons or like have very boring animals for said lessons. And he's just like not really listening to her still. He also wasn't there when she got there. He came out of the forest. So she was like, he won't tell me what it is. He says it's a surprise. So I don't know what we're going to have at the next lesson.
Yeah.
And also he's up to something. So some people are very excited that Hagrid is back, but not everyone. So like Fred and George are thrilled.
Lee Jordan, thrilled.
Lee Jordan, yeah. But like Parvati and Lavender, not so excited about it because as Harry admits internally to himself, Hagrid just isn't the best teacher. So it's not.
I don't think you should feel guilty for admitting that though, Harry. Like
I don't either.
Some people are not meant to be teachers. And
yeah,
I mean, Dumbledore, while this was a kind gesture to be like, teach this class.
You need to give him a little bit more, like set some boundaries for him. Yeah. Just like set some boundaries for him, maybe try that. And if that still doesn't work, like you got to let him go.
How about like Hagrid has to submit the curriculum, like the lesson plans, and then they get
exactly. That's what you should do anyway. Dumbledore.
Yeah. Oh. Dumbledore.
So here we are at Hagrid's first lesson with the trio, like the trios class, you know, which includes Malfoy, unfortunately, and the other Slytherins. So when they arrive for the first lesson back, he's still covered in bruises and looks awful. And so then Harry's like, was he like attacked or like bit by something that like the bruises can't heal? Like he was like, what's going on?
It seems worse.
Yeah, it seems worse. He's like, he's not getting better. What's going on? And
he's also holding.
Yeah. Go ahead, say it, Adam.
He's holding a carcass.
Yeah,
as we talked about last week.
For real.
Of a cow. Is it a cow?
Yeah, what looks like half of a cow carcass, basically. And he's very excited to show them whatever this is because he has the only trained herd in like all of England.
Ari, this is your nightmare. This is your waking nightmare. It's to go to care of magical creatures. You don't even see the creatures themselves. You just can see this like carcass.
The dead, an animal's dead, half of an animal's dead body. Yeah. We were out at dinner recently and Michael got like half of a chicken. And then like the way they brought it out was like half the chicken. And I was like,
looked like half of a chicken. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, I think I said, I was like, oh, wow, that's really half a chicken. It's just like,
oh wow!
I was like, I know. Please don't like vegetarians and vegans. Please don't come at me. I know that the food industry is like horrible. I am very aware, but like, I am very intentional about when I do eat meat. I really try not to eat it that much, and Adam can attest to this. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I just feel like I need the protein. Blah blah blah. Whatever. Anyways, I was like, oh yeah, that I could have done without that. I just was like. Yeah, that's bad. But Michael's going to eat whatever he wants to eat. So he wanted to have that chicken. So you go. It's the same thing in like, whenever I would go to like the Korean markets, they'd always have like the dead ducks like hung over. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's all, I'm just like, oh, it's just sad. Like, it just makes me sad. I don't think I would ever be able to eat duck, even though I've heard people say it's really good.
I think you talked about the dead ducks when we brought up the hog's head.
Oh, probably. I just don't like seeing it. So yeah, Hagrid's very excited because he has the only trained herd. Did he say in all of England or was it like Scotland? I have my book here so I can check.
I don't think they ever say Scotland.
Yeah, that's why I was like, you're in Scotland. Oh, only one in Britain. He said Britain.
Britain.
Okay.
Britain.
Great. The only herd in all of Great Britain. So Malfoy, along with some other members of the class, are not excited about this. And they're very concerned if this herd of whatever this is indeed really trained.
Right.
And so Hagrid's like, yeah, it is. Like, you don't need to be worried, whatever. And Malfoy's like, well, you told us like things like that before, blah, blah, blah. And then Hagrid's gets like a little uncomfortable, but kind of like keeps it together. And then Malfoy's like, also, what happened to your face? And Hagrid's like, that's none of your business, bitch.
That's none of your business. Did you just say, let's talk about my face?
So then they end up like in the middle of the forest, and then Hagrid like lets out like essentially what I like to think of as like what Bigfoot hunters do when they're trying to find Bigfoot.
Oh.
Like they'll literally just be like, wow, wow. Like it's just always like, or like a loud like grunt. Like they'll be like, huh. Like it's just whatever.
Yeah.
He does that. And then Harry notices in the distance, well, excuse me, Hagrid has to call them like, is it twice?
I think it's
two
three
times, I think. 2 or 3 times. And then Harry sees in the distance a pair of blank, white, shining eyes getting closer and closer, coming out of the darkness, which is very spooky. And then, that's Adam coming out of the darkness. Adam, you already came out, sweetie.
That was my coming out story.
Out of the darkness, yeah. So these blank, shining eyes belong to none other than those skeletal horses that Harry saw at the beginning of term in this book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Harry is just like, oh, like filled with all this relief because he's like, oh my God, I'll finally find out what the hell is going on. Like, I'll finally know what this is about. So there's one, like a big one that comes first, and then I think a second one that's like slightly smaller comes. And Hagrid's like, oh yeah, here's another one. So there's 2. Harry can kind of like, he looks around, notices that Ron is definitely unaware. Ron is even like, why doesn't he call again? Like, what's going on? So Harry's like, okay, Ron can't see them. But then he's kind of looking around, and he can see that it looks like Neville can see them, and then a Slytherin boy, who we don't know who he is. He can see them as well. So apparently these things are called thestrals. And so Hagrid's like, okay, great. Like, who can see them? And then once he says that they're called thestrals, wait, is that right? Does he say they're okay. He says they're thestrals. Once he says they're thestrals, Hermione is like, oh, okay.
Got it.
Okay. Hermione
I've read about them.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, if anything happened to you, you should just go to Hermione and be like, just on the off chance that you do know what I'm talking about, Hermione Granger.
Can I
tell you this experience I had? Yeah.
If you took a photo of a thestral.
Oh, yeah. Great question.
The camera is not a thing that it doesn't see death, right?
Yeah.
So then would the photo turn out without? But then if the person viewed the photo, would they see it? Because it's because the photos aren't still.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. I don't know. That's very meta, Adam.
Thank you. Well, because like I'm sure Hermione has seen probably a drawing of a thestral.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Because there's definitely someone who has witnessed death who saw a thestral and drew it. So like we all can know what a thestral looks like.
Yeah,
it's possible.
Not from the films. To be clear, not from the films. They did not include thestrals in the movie. Did they? Oh, do they?
They did, girl. I was like, what are you saying?
Yeah, they have to. They have to. You're right. Because they have to.
Yeah, we see them.
They have to get there. Yeah. You're right.
So once Hagrid reveals that they're thestrals, I think it's Lavender Brown, is like, oh, but they're really unlucky. Or is it Parvati?
It's one of them.
Dang
I don't
it.
remember. It is one of them, though.
Oh, yeah, it is Parvati. Okay, I'm glad I checked. So Parvati is like, no, but they're really unlucky. She's like, oh, no, Trelawney told me about them. Like, all this superstition, blah, blah. And Hagrid's like, no, that's just a weird superstition that was made up about them because people that can see death can see them. So they're associated with death. So Hagrid's like, well, how can some of us see them and some cannot? And of course, Hermione raises her hand and shares that only people that have seen death can see Thestrals. And so then Hagrid awards Gryffindor House 10 points. And right at this moment, the devil herself, Dolores Umbridge, shows up.
She sure does, doesn't she?
But I love, this is one of my favorite moments in all of the Harry Potter books because she goes, ahem! And because Hagrid has never heard her clear her throat, he's looking at the Thestral like something's wrong with it.
Yeah.
So imagine like hearing like ahem and then being like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" Only to then Umbridge pops out.
Yeah. Who has he seen
so
die?
Funny. His dad. His little human dad died.
Yeah. His little human dad.
His little human dad, who could sit on his shoulder, that we were like, absolutely not, no. So Umbridge is continuing to talk to him in the same condescending, like incredibly insulting voice that she was before. It's a nightmare. It was like so hard to read. I was like, or so hard to listen to for me because I was listening to it.
Yeah.
But basically, I'm sorry, she's revealing that she has trouble understanding him, which, like, I feel like you need to admit that that's the issue. Like, so obviously there's, like, accents here sometimes that I am not familiar with. So, like, it's my problem. I can't understand them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like her to make it that it's, like, on him. I'm like, girl, it is so clearly you. Like, just listen. She's projecting. She's projecting her, not bias, her classism, her racism.
It's
racism
like, yeah,
onto him.
It's classism, really.
It's like bigotry, isn't it? It's just that.
Yeah.
So he is confused why she's talking to him like this.
So he thinks she's slow.
Yeah. So he starts like trying to explain to her Thestrals. He's like, Thestrals, we're talking about Thestrals today. Like, I'm glad you can join us. And she's like, I'm sorry. So then he's like, Thestrals? Do you know what Thestrals are? And then she's like, has to resort to crude sign language to communicate. And then Hermione is like, literally boiling as this is happening. She's so upset. And then Hagrid is like, okay, where was I? Trying to get back on track. And then she makes a note, has short-term memory issues. And so then he's like starting to get a little frazzled by her being like this. And then she makes a note or like addresses him and says, do you know that the ministry has labeled Thestrals as dangerous? To which Hagrid kind of chuckles and is like, no, they're not. I mean, yeah, they can like take care of themselves, but he's like, if you really annoy them, maybe they'll like bite you. But he was like, you really have to, try to like piss them off. Like they're really gentle, basically. And then she makes a note that he is getting enjoyment out of the thought of a Thestral hurting someone because he like chuckled about it. It's just, and then he's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, no. Then she's like, I'm going to walk around and talk to the students. It's just like, oh my God. It's
a
so
nightmare.
Cringe. And then Hagrid all the while is just kind of like, okay. So then he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to like get back to my lesson, I guess. But Umbridge goes and very loudly asks Pansy if she can understand like the lessons. To which Pansy says, no, she can't, because it sounds like grunting a lot of the time. So then Hagrid is like obviously affected by this, but he's trying to just like power through.
Can I go back real quick?
Yeah.
Just real quick. This herd is like owned by Hogwarts.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
to
I
be
think really
like-
it's owned by Hagrid specifically, but like I think it's for Hogwarts. They work
Right.
at Hogwarts.
They work at Hogwarts. So
Yeah.
to be like, did you know that the ministry actually labeled them threatening or dangerous or whatever? And it's like, okay, fine. But then, like, we shouldn't have, like, you want to bring this up today?
Yeah.
They're here.
They've been here for a while, girl.
At this point, it's a petting zoo, okay?
At this point, they're ponies.
Right.
Like, it's like being like, well, horses are dangerous or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but like these are trained. Like a wild horse is dangerous. You're right. But like these are like trained. So anyway.
Also, I didn't like that she was like she had no idea like about Thestrals, but then immediately was like, did you know that the ministry does classify them as dangerous? And it's like,
yeah.
Do they? Or did you just make that shit up?
Yeah. Whatever, girl. So after Hagrid kind of, is able to get somewhat back on track, Hagrid continues by saying, continues with the lesson by explaining that Thestrals have an excellent sense of direction. Umbridge asks Neville who he saw die without like any empathy or like sensitivity. Like she's just like asked him very indifferently. And then Neville's like, oh, my granddad, I saw my granddad die.
She should have asked Harry.
Yeah, she doesn't want to talk to Harry, I don't think. And then she's like, do you like them? And he's like, yeah, they're pretty cool. And then she's like, makes a note that students are too intimidated to say that they're afraid. And then she just leaves. Then she's like, okay, that's it. Well, thank you. I think I've got all I need. And she like walks off and Hermione is just like, once again, like boiling. There's like lasers coming out of her eyes.
Yeah.
And so Neville is left like feeling guilty because he's like, I didn't like confused that was essentially the only question she asked him. And then she just like made that note and left. And then as they're walking back, Hermione's like, that was a really good lesson too. Like she was like, the fact that she did that. And she was like, honestly, Thestrals are like a really interesting animal for us to observe. And she was like, it's like Hagrid said, like they can take care of themselves and stuff. But like, she was like, they're a good animal to like get to know. And then without really thinking all the way through, Hermione's like, I wish I could see them. And Harry's like, oh, you do, huh? And then she like immediately is like, oh no, oh my God, I'm sorry. That was stupid of me. I shouldn't have said anything. And Harry's like, it's okay. I wasn't trying to like start a fight. I just, reminder of like why people can see them. But I understand what she's just interested in them. That's what she was trying to say.
It's annoying to be like, oh, you wish you had seen death. No, she's saying she wishes she could see the animal that's invisible. Yes. What are you talking about?
She just wishes she could see what they look like. So, and then at that moment, after they're talking about the Thestrals, Ron like makes some joke about Ron being bad at Quidditch again, and then Hermione's like, just ignore him. It's fine. So Christmas is approaching, and the prefects help put up the Christmas decorations. I think this was when I thought I did make a note about it snowing, but I guess I didn't. So I lied to you guys. I'm not going to talk about the weather in this book. So the prefects are putting up Christmas decorations, and I just want to be a prefect so I can put up Christmas decorations in Hogwarts. I mean, that sounds like a whole bunch of fun to me.
Yeah, until you have to deal with Peeves, like, everything.
But you have to deal with Peeves messing up everything anyway.
That's true.
And they also are patrolling the corridors in shifts with Filch, which I was like, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, absolutely not. So, Hermione has stopped making the hats as often as she used to. And she's very worried about not being able to free all the elves before the end of term. And I was like, oh my God. Because once again, Harry has still not told her about his conversation with Dobby. And I'm like, Harry, at this point, you need to say something. Like, this has gone a little too far. So at first, Harry's like pouting a little bit. He's a little bitter Betty because he doesn't think that he's going to go home for Christmas with Ron. Like, he thinks Ron's leaving him to go home by himself. But then Ron's like, oh, no, sorry. I forgot to tell you. You're coming with me. And Hermione rolls her eyes, and I was like, I am Hermione.
Me too. Same. Also me. Yeah.
So rude. How did you forget that? Of course he's going to think like, oh, okay, well, if you don't tell me I can come back with you, like, I'm just going to stay here by myself, I guess. So then Harry's very excited, but then he also feels bad because that means that Sirius is probably going to be alone at Grimmauld Place for Christmas.
Yeah.
So he's like, I feel kind of bad, but also like, I want to have a good Christmas. He feels very conflicted.
The idea of Sirius like pulling the Christmas cracker with Creature was so funny in my brain. With the crown.
Yeah, the little crowns.
The Christmas crown.
Yeah. So there's one last meeting for the DA, and Dobby has very generously decorated the room for Christmas. I'm just saying, he has like a million things to do. Like this poor elf. He probably was like thrilled.
Harry Christmas.
Have a very hairy Christmas. Is that what the banner said? I forgot about that.
Yes.
Yeah,
The banner said.
Very hairy Christmas. So Angelina comes in for the lesson, and she reveals that they've got some new players on the Gryffindor Quidditch team because they need to replace, Fred, George, and Harry. Mm-hmm. So none other than Ginny Weasley is our new seeker. Love it. Mm-hmm. It was weird that Angelina was like, I know, but she's pretty good. Wasn't it weird that was her response? I was like, why would Ginny be bad at Quidditch? Like, why is that the reaction?
I don't know. It was weird because she was reacting to like Harry being like, oh, Ginny.
Yeah. But it's like, yeah, Ginny. So anyway, so Ginny is the new seeker, and the new beaters are two boys called Andrew Kirk and Jack Sloper, who I don't think we ever hear about. Oh, no, maybe we do, because Fred and George are gone. So they probably will be Will they be the beaters in the next book?
Ginny Weasley, said Katie. Harry gaped at her. Yeah, I know, said Angelina, pulling out her wand and flexing her arm. But she's pretty good, actually. Nothing on you, of course, she said, throwing him a very dirty look, but as we can't have you.
I don't understand why that's the response. And for what? Just so we're like, oh, Ginny isn't that good, apparently? Because then immediately in the next book, she's great at Quidditch, so...
Is she a chaser in the next book?
Yeah.
Why didn't she go out for keeper?
I don't think... Because she wants to be a chaser, really. And I think she only went for seeker because Harry wasn't there, obviously. But I know, like, later she said something about she really wanted to be a chaser. That's like the position she wants to play. They base for the Defense Against the Dark Arts, or I'm sorry, what was it? What do they call it? Just DA for Dumbledore's army. Mm-hmm. They basically just review everything one last time, to which of course Zachariah Smith makes like a rude comment. Just a classic. He's just a neg.
Brand. Yeah,
like does he also have a crush on Harry? This is like Malfoy behavior. I was like, bro,
maybe,
probably. And so, which I'm sorry, if you like someone, like the stupidest thing in the world. It is the stupidest thing in the world to be mean to them. I'm sorry. You are a child.
Yeah.
I just think that's so dumb. So they go through, they're like reviewing everything basically, and everything is going pretty well. Harry's like, yeah, everyone's doing really well. Like, good job, guys. Great progress, blah, blah, blah. The class ends, and then Harry hangs back because Cho is hanging back, basically. And he wanted a Merry Christmas from her, which I just want to say, we learn about this in acting class, that everyone has like an objective with their scene. Like, everyone's like, my objective in the scene is to get this person for Harry, it's to get Cho to audibly wish him a happy Christmas.
Right.
But I just want to say, if you're doing this in real life, like, you're going to set yourself up for failure. Like, the fact that you're essentially, like, putting pressure on this interaction with Cho for, like, that to happen, I'm like, Harry, what are we doing? So he's very excited when he realizes that they are indeed alone with each other. But then Cho sniffs and turns around and reveals that she's crying.
Weeping.
Like, yeah, visibly weeping. And so then Harry's like, what's up?
Oh, Cho.
Which, like, I do want to say in this moment that, like, Harry was raised by the Dursleys. So he was not taught, like, how to deal with emotions at all. Like, if he himself had emotions, he had to, like, stuff them down because they didn't care. But also, like, Vernon Dursley and Petunia Dursley are, like, the least emotional people, I think, in this entire book series. Like, they just, unless something happens to Dudley, and then Petunia's, like, a mess. But but they're just not, like, emotionally mature people. So I do understand that, like, Harry has not been set up for success in that way. Like, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt in that way. So Cho basically shares that she's wondering if Cedric had known all this stuff that they're learning right now, would he still be alive? And Harry's like, he did know this. And that's not why he died, you know? Like, that's not what happened. It was just like he was in the wrong place, wrong time. And Harry's very upset in this moment because he's like, oh, she just wants to talk about Cedric. She doesn't actually like, it's just everything is kind of like, you know, falling apart for him in his mind.
He got so excited because he thought this was going to be the moment, and then it quickly deflates when she's like,
exactly. So Harry kind of goes to leave or, like, turns towards the door or whatever, and Cho is like, oh, don't leave. Wait, no, don't leave. I'm sorry for, you know, being like this. And then she tells him that he's a really good teacher, to which she's like, thanks. He doesn't know what to say. Yeah. And then he says that, or internally, you know, he wants to run, but he feels stuck, like frozen in time at the same time. And she's getting closer and closer to him. And then she points out the mistletoe. And then he mentions the Nargles, to which she's like, what are Nargles? And he's like, I don't know. No idea. You'd have to ask Luna Lovegood. And then Cho kind of chuckles a little bit. And then he's noting that she's super close to him now. And he can, like, see, like, all the freckles on her nose. And then he gets, oh no, she is very close to him. And then she says that she really likes him.
Yes.
And then it just says she was far too close now. And then we have, like, a little jump in time.
Yeah.
Harry gets back to the common room. And he's being so weird. He's being so weird. So Hermione's like, okay, hi, Harry. And then Ron's like, what kept you? Like, completely oblivious.
Yeah.
And then Hermione's like, was it Cho? Is that why
Did you have a little moment? Did she corner you?
Did she corner you? And then Harry's like, Hermione's like, did you kiss? And then Ron, like, sits, like, straight up. Like, Ron's, like, laying down, so he, like, sits straight up, and he's like... And then Harry's like, yeah, we did. And then Ron's like, yeah! Yeah. And then Ron's like, yeah! Yeah! And then Hermione's like, ugh, stupid. Mm-hmm. So then Ron's like, well, how was it? And then Harry responds by saying, wet. And I love that she describes it as Ron let out a sound that sounded like he was, like, excited but also, like, disturbed in the same moment. Like, it was so great. I was like, perfect. And then Ron's like, oh, are you that bad at kissing? And then Harry's like, oh, I don't know. Because he hadn't thought about that. And then he is thinking. And so now he starts thinking about that. And he's like, maybe I am? And then Hermione's like, no, that's not what's happening. Of course you're not. To which Ron is like, well, how would you know that? And then Hermione reveals that poor Cho Chang spends a lot of her time crying these days because she's just going through it a little bit.
Yeah.
And Ron's like, well, you think a bit of kissing would cheer her up. I mean, come on now. And Hermione's like, you are the most insensitive wart that I have ever met. And Ron's like, what? What? Like, who does that when someone kisses them? Like, what kind of person is crying when someone kisses them? Which Harry has left out the fact that she was already crying.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they kissed and then she was like, like she was already crying. And so Hermione's like, well, you must know, like, how she's feeling right now. Like, try to think about, you know, what it's like for her. And both of them are like, well, what do you mean? What is she feeling right now? And then Hermione, here we go. Hermione doing the emotional labor for her male friends.
How is this book written by... Please explain how this book is written by a woman. Please explain to me how this book is written by a woman. Please explain to me how this book... This made me want to... Not what Hermione's saying, but like later when Harry's like... We should be taught how women's brains work because they're so... Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. I was like, is this a stand-up comedy routine in 1986? Like, what are we doing?
Do you think that Jo is a pick-me?
I think she's a nightmare. I think is what Jo is.
I mean, obviously she's like not an ally. Obviously. We know that much. So is she a woman that like wants to be... I don't know. Never mind. I don't want to talk about it. So Hermione explains Cho is feeling very sad because of Cedric, confused because now she likes Harry, but guilty about liking Harry and worried that people will like, you know, judge her basically.
Right.
Yeah. And then she's also confused because Harry was the person that was with Cedric when he died. So like that's a whole other layer to the situation.
And no one knows how Cedric died. Like everyone just knows that like...
Yeah, some people think maybe Harry did something to Cedric.
Right, but even if it like whatever, they just know that like even if you believe Harry's story, all he's told everybody is that Voldemort killed Cedric. That's it. That's the only thing that people know. They don't know, like, he was offed immediately as soon as they port-keyed to the graveyard. Like, they don't know anything other than that. Which, like, that's... Harry doesn't have to tell them that, but, like...
No. But, like, and so, yeah, there's all that layered in where it's, like, she might want to talk to him about Cedric, but then she feels bad because it's, like, she likes him. So it's, like, this weird thing where it's kind of... She has a lot of... Her objective is very confusing. She kind of likes him. She wants to be with him. Then she kind of wants to learn about Cedric. Then she wants to like honor Cedric's memory. But then she also wants to like get to know Harry because she liked him even before this. Before she ended up with Cedric, she clearly kind of, you know, thought Harry was cute and stuff like that. So it's just, there's a lot. It's very confusing. And then she's also been flying really badly because mentally she's not doing well. So she's worried that she's going to get kicked off the Ravenclaw team as well. So then the boys are like, or well, Ron is like, one person can't feel all that at once or they'll explode. And Hermione's like, you can't feel all that at once because you are emotionally immature. Other people, on the other hand, can feel a variety of emotions. But which is funny because later in this chapter, Harry is like essentially going through the same type of thing where he's having all these different thoughts about Cho and feeling very conflicted about it. So Hermione's like, well, were you not like, all you have to do is just be nice to her. Like, were you nice to her? And Harry's like, I mean, I think I was. I kind of like, you know, patted her on the back a little bit. And Hermione's kind of just like,
okay.
All right. Which I just love. I'm like, yeah, not the best. And then Harry reveals basically that he was going to ask her out, or like he would like to ask her out, but he does feel a little bit conflicted about her being in this headspace, which like I feel like that's understandable. Like I get it. It's like, well, maybe not. It might be in a selfish way of him being like, I don't know if I want to deal with that, but it's like, yeah, I mean, she might not be in the best headspace right now to like start a relationship. Like I don't think she is. I think that's hard for her because she does have feelings for Harry, but I don't think it's the right time. So apparently Ron's like, who are you writing this novel to anyway? And Hermione's like, Viktor. Which I was just like, where is this coming from? Was she asking him about something? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember why she's. Yeah, I can't remember. So
I don't
think it was necessary.
Love that they're still in correspondence. Not
well,
in
yeah,
a Ron
I mean, at this
way,
point, he's like a full adult at this point, right?
Yeah, and she's 15.
Yeah. Yeah, not the best. So
I think
it
at
turns
this
out
point
that,
it's very platonic, though. I would assume.
I don't know.
You think they're sexting?
No, they're definitely not doing that. But like, I feel like he obviously is very interested in her in that way. So I just don't. I don't know. So they end up being the last people in the common room again, and then they go off to bed. And while Harry and Ron are off to bed and they've separated from Hermione, Ron's like, what does she see in Viktor anyway? And Harry's like, well, he's older and he's a professional Quidditch player. Which I feel like just for Ron, it's like the things that are like exactly what he's insecure about. So it's just, I just think it's funny that Harry's like, obviously. So they're off to bed. Harry is like spiraling, kind of thinking about stuff with Cho. Just being like, he does want to ask her out. He should have asked her out. She's probably mad at him because he didn't. But then also like, does he want to be with her if she's in this weird space? And like, he's just having a hard time. So then that morphs into him having a dream where they're in the room of requirement. Cho is very upset with him because he supposedly was supposed to give her 100 chocolate frog cards. And then he didn't have any to give to her. So then she's very upset. And then she says that Cedric gave her loads of chocolate frog cards. And then she like dumps them all out for him to see. Then Hermione's like, well, you did tell her that you were going to do that. So that's not great, Harry. Then she's trying to convince him to give her his firebolt. And he's trying to convince her that that's not a good idea. And he doesn't want to give Cho his firebolt.
And he doesn't have it because Dolores Umbridge has it.
Yeah, and he doesn't have it anyway. And then he had just come to that room to decorate the room with baubles that look like Dobby's head in the first place. Like full dream, just full craziness.
Dream logic, where it's like there is no logic. This reminds me of recently I had a dream where I was friends with everyone in 17, but Jung-on like didn't like me. And I was like devastated. I know, my nightmare. I literally like thinking about it making me so upset. And so it wasn't like he just like didn't want to like talk to me. Like every time I would try to talk to him, he would kind of like go away or something. And so then I was literally in the dream was talking to S. Coops about it. That I was like, why doesn't he like me? And S. Coops was like trying to be like, no, he does. But I was like, he doesn't. Oh no.
So thank you, Dream S. Coops, for making me feel better. So then this dream morphs into suddenly Harry is like slithering on the ground. He's got like a long, not my dream, Harry's dream, not my 17 dream.
Yeah.
So
maybe he didn't like you because you were slithering on the ground, Ari.
Yeah, red flag. So the dream changes and Harry's slithering on the ground down a long corridor, and he doesn't say that he's a snake, but like we know he's a snake by what he's describing. Mm-hmm. So he notices, while he's in this form, he notices a man sleeping in the corridor that he has just entered. And he slips out his tongue to try and like smell the man, because famously snakes smell with their tongue.
Smell with their
so
tongue.
he like tastes the man's scent, and that like gives him the information that he needs to know. So the man is alive but drowsy, and he wants to bite. He, as in Harry, wants to bite him, but then he kind of reels it himself back in because he has more important things to do, I guess. So right at this moment, the man wakes up and sees Harry as the snake, and the snake then bites Arthur. It's like, hard to explain. The snake, aka Harry, bites Arthur 3 times, and the way it's described is he can feel his fangs plunging into
his flesh.
Arthur 3 times. And then it morphs to, well, the man ends up unconscious on the floor, basically. He's like not stirring. And then it morphs to Harry's forehead hurting, like literally feeling like his head is going to split open. And then he wakes up because Ron is shaking him awake, and his head is burning. It's like blinding him. He feels he's in so much pain that he vomits. And then he's like, but I have to tell Ron what's going on. Someone runs out of the room. One of the other boys runs out of the room to go get helped. Yeah, it's we find out it's Neville. Mm-hmm. And then Harry turns to Ron after being sick, and he's like, your dad, he's been attacked. He's been bitten. It's really serious. And then Ron's like, you just had a dream. Like, it's okay. Like, you're not well. Just like chill out a little bit. And Harry's like, no, that wasn't a dream. I was like dreaming, but like, that's not what's happening right now. He's like, I know it's not. I know what I just saw was real. Like, he's like, I know I saw something. And then he tells Ron, he's like, I saw it. I did it. Which I was like, oh, wow. Like, he just straight up told him that. I don't know. Especially because it's Ron's dad. Like, I mean, good for Harry for being truthful, obviously. I think he does end up kind of going back on his story, if I'm remembering correctly later. But, like, he's like, I did it. And then he tells, after he says that, he throws up again. And then he's like, we need to find out where Arthur is, like, right now. Like, he's really not doing well. So then Neville comes back in with Minerva. And Harry internally is, like, so relieved to see her. He's, like, so grateful she's here. And a member of the Order of the Phoenix, like, exactly the person that he wants to talk to. He's like, oh, thank God. So then he's, like, tells her exactly what happened, everything that he said to Ron, that, you know, he's been attacked by a snake. The snake was huge. It's really bad. Like, and then she's like, you just had a dream, you were asleep. And once again, he's like, no, I was having a dream, but this interrupted it, and it was real. I know it was real. This really happened. And so then at first, Minerva's just like staring at him. And then he starts getting frustrated because he's obviously worried, like, no one's going to believe him. And he's like, I'm not lying. I'm not mad. I saw it happen. Like, it was real. And then she believes him. And she says that. She says, I believe you. Put your dressing gown on. We're going to see the headmaster. And that's the end of the chapter.
It's a good chapter.
It's such a good chapter. Yeah. I mean, the ending really specific, like the way it ends is so good.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the next chapter. I like when this is the first time we've had like a confrontation with Dumbledore.
Yes. 22 chapters in.
Yeah. Yeah. What, halfway through, basically. I think more than halfway through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Slacking on the job.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up this chapter. Next week, we'll be reading chapter 22 called St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. So just
hell yeah. That's the chapter. I forgot that that's also in this chapter.
So just
in the next chapter.
Real short title for a chapter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, tiny. Really compact.
You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts, as well as video versions on the Ampliverse YouTube channel and Spotify. As always, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so we can get a perfect Newt score, 5 stars only, or else you will also be attacked by a snake.
Oh yeah, don't want that.
That's it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HPAnxious or YouTube and TikTok at The Ampliverse. We are hosted on Spotify for podcasters, so thank you to them. And we are a proud member of The Ampliverse. Check them out at theampliverse.com. Thank you, Ariana.
Thank you, Adamana.
And as always, Knox.